Jordan had been working at the company for 3 years, and while he had seen plenty of success in his career, the feeling of being overlooked because of his race was always there. Every meeting, every promotion discussion, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was seen differently from his colleagues. It wasn't that his work wasn't recognized. Jordan had a reputation for being thorough, smart, and passionate about his role. But no matter how hard he worked, there always seemed to be an invisible barrier between him and those around him. He had started to feel like a token, like his contributions were just there to check a box, but nothing more. His boss, Mr. Thompson, was an experienced leader, someone who had risen through the ranks of the company with authority and respect. But Jordan couldn't shake the feeling that Mr. Thompson had something against him. A bias, subtle but undeniable, that made him treat Jordan as an outsider. He was the only black person in the department, and it seemed like his race was a problem no one ever explicitly addressed. Every time they had a one-on-one, Mr. Thompson's tone was colder with him. He wasn't as encouraging as he was with others. Jordan worked harder to prove himself, hoping that his efforts would speak for themselves. But the more he tried, the more he realized that his race would always be the first thing people noticed. One day, it all came to a head. Jordan had spent weeks putting together an extensive report that he knew would impress his boss. The project had been demanding. Late nights, multiple revisions, and constant adjustments. But he was proud of what he had accomplished. It was a significant proposal that could change the trajectory of the company, and Jordan felt like it was his moment to shine. The day came when he was to present the report in a meeting with Mr. Thompson and several other senior colleagues. As Jordan walked into the meeting room, he could feel the tension in the air. Everyone was already seated, papers scattered on the table. He set his presentation materials down and began. He spoke with clarity, explaining the numbers, the strategies, and the vision behind the proposal. His colleagues, some of whom were senior managers, nodded in approval. Mr. Thompson sat across from him, his arms crossed, his eyes scanning the document, not making eye contact. There was no spark of excitement, no recognition of the effort Jordan had put into the presentation. When Jordan finished, he felt a sense of pride, waiting for Mr. Thompson's feedback. But instead of the praise he was hoping for, Mr. Thompson barely looked up. "Good work, Jordan. We'll discuss it further," he said, his tone flat, almost dismissive. Jordan felt the sting. The other colleagues spoke up, adding their thoughts, but it wasn't the feedback that stung. It was the unspoken message. Jordan's work didn't matter as much. He wasn't important enough to be genuinely recognized. Later that day, his colleague, Mark, a white employee, presented a similar proposal. Mark's presentation wasn't as polished as Jordan's, but it was given the attention Jordan had hoped for. Mr. Thompson was engaged, praising Mark's ideas, giving him nods of approval, and mentioning how impressive his approach was. Jordan sat there, stunned. It wasn't just the work that had been overlooked. It was him. It was his race. The thought lingered in his mind long after the meeting ended. Could it be that his hard work didn't matter as much, simply because of the color of his skin? That evening, Jordan couldn't shake the feeling. His thoughts were clouded with frustration and disbelief. He sat at his desk long after everyone had left, staring at the glowing screen, unable to focus. He had worked harder than anyone else in that room, and yet it seemed like his contributions were treated as secondary. The next day, Jordan walked into Mr. Thompson's office. His heart was pounding in his chest as he stood in front of his boss's desk. Mr. Thompson looked up, surprised by the visit, but he quickly gestured for Jordan to sit. "What can I do for you, Jordan?" he asked, his voice neutral. Jordan's voice was steady, but there was an intensity behind it. "Mr. Thompson, I need to talk to you about something. It's about the meeting yesterday." Mr. Thompson raised an eyebrow, clearly caught off guard by Jordan's tone. "Go ahead." "I've been with this company for 3 years," Jordan began, "and in all that time, I've worked hard to prove myself. I've put in countless hours, countless efforts, only to feel like I'm being overlooked, like the work I do doesn't matter the same way it matters for others." Mr. Thompson blinked, clearly uncomfortable. "Jordan, I don't know what you're talking about. I value your contributions." Jordan's gaze sharpened. "I don't think you do. Not the way you value everyone else's. You didn't even look up when I presented yesterday. And yet, when Mark spoke, you couldn't stop praising him. I'm doing the same work, the same hours, the same effort. But somehow it feels like it's never enough, and I can't help but wonder if it's because of my race." The silence in the room was heavy. Mr. Thompson shifted in his seat, avoiding Jordan's gaze. He cleared his throat. "I never meant to make you feel that way, Jordan. I didn't realize—" "I don't think you did." Jordan cut him off. "But the fact is, every time I walk into this office, I feel like I'm fighting just to be seen. I shouldn't have to work twice as hard to get half the recognition." There was a pause before Mr. Thompson finally spoke again, his voice quieter this time. "I didn't realize I was making you feel that way. And I'm sorry. You're right. I've treated you differently, and that's not fair. But I want to change. I don't want you to feel this way anymore." The conversation was a turning point. It wasn't an easy conversation, but it was a necessary one. For the first time, Jordan had confronted his boss about the underlying bias that had been present since the day he started at the company. Mr. Thompson didn't just apologize, he acknowledged his mistakes. Over the next few weeks, he worked to actively change his behavior. He started recognizing Jordan's achievements in front of the team, making sure to highlight the contributions Jordan made in meetings. But it wasn't just about recognition. It was about respect. It was about the understanding that biases, whether conscious or not, had to be confronted and addressed. Jordan wasn't just a good worker, he was an equal, deserving of respect and appreciation, regardless of his race. Over time, their relationship changed. Mr. Thompson began to mentor Jordan, helping him grow in his career and providing the support he had never given before. Jordan, in turn, flourished. He didn't have to fight for recognition anymore. It was given to him willingly. But the most important thing was the lesson they both learned. Bias was something that existed in all of us. It wasn't enough to acknowledge it. We had to act on it, change how we interacted with others, be more mindful, and treat people for their value, not the color of their skin. Jordan's story wasn't just about getting the recognition he deserved. It was about change. A change in his boss, in his co-workers, and in the company. It was a change in how people thought about each other, about race, and about the importance of seeing each other as equals. And for Mr. Thompson, it was a reminder that being a good leader didn't mean just being good at business. It meant being good to the people you lead, recognizing their worth, seeing their potential, and never letting them feel invisible. Jordan's journey wasn't easy. It took courage to speak up and confront a system that had failed him for so long. But in doing so, he not only changed his own future, he set the stage for change within the company. The key takeaway from his story is that recognizing biases, confronting them, and creating a culture of respect and understanding can make all the difference, not just in the workplace, but in life. This story isn't just about one person's struggle. It's a reminder that change starts with us, with the conversations we have, the actions we take, and the respect we show one another. If you like this story, subscribe this channel for positive stories. Thanks for watching.